And she learned that this new discovery supports the biblical accounts of King David and his son Solomon.
And she learned that this new discovery supports the biblical accounts of King David and his son Solomon. Beneath the desert was silent, not the kind of silence that soothes, but one that unsettles. A stillness that felt ancient, haunted, as if something beneath the surface had been holding its breath for 5,000 years. Then it happened. A clatter of tools echoed across the hill just outside Jerusalem, city of David. Dust stirred, a stone shifted, and a voice cracked over the radio. "We found a seal, Palea Hebrew. This isn't a coincidence." Archaeologist Dr. Lena Asher froze. She had seen that symbol before, buried in a manuscript from a monastery in southern Italy. A forgotten map, a strange star, and a warning in ink that faded as if resisting time itself. He who opens the chamber must know. Wisdom cuts both ways. Nobody expected what came next. What looked like a cave from the surface was no ordinary chamber. It was sealed with limestone blocks so precise they could have only been cut by royal engineers. But more than that, the entire entrance was designed to repel time itself. No water damage, no collapse, just silence and a pulse. Because as the team descended, their instruments went haywire, static, compass needles spinning. Even drones lost signal near the opening. What were they standing above? Some whispered, "Solomon." Others dismissed it until they uncovered the inscription, barely legible, buried beneath soot and dust. "Here lies the king who asked for wisdom over gold." That's when the questions began. Was this truly the tomb of Solomon, the son of David, builder of the first temple, keeper of secrets? And if so, why had it remained untouched for millennia? The air shifted as if something ancient had just noticed them. It started in the unlikeliest place, an old monastery archive in southern Italy. A centuries-old manuscript long dismissed as legend had been collecting dust for generations. The parchment was brittle. The ink faded. But hidden in its folds was a crude map drawn by a group of Jewish scholars fleeing the Babylonian invasion. At first glance, it seemed fanciful. Doodle's mythology. But one mark stood out. A strange emblem. A six-pointed star woven with lions located southeast of ancient Jerusalem. Librarians assumed it to be decorative, but Dr. Lena Asher didn't. She recognized it instantly. The starion motif had appeared in early Solomonic iconography on temple relics, ancient coins, even rumored artifacts buried beneath the rubble of the first temple. A Shar cross referenced the mark with recent ground-penetrating radar scans of the city of David's outskirts. And there it was, an anomaly, a perfect rectangle about 30 feet below ground, resting under a barren hill. No ruins, no construction, just void. They drilled and then they struck stone. What emerged next shocked everyone. The chamber wasn't just intact, it was untouched. The entrance sealed with limestone blocks, fitted so tightly, no dust had entered. On the lintel was an inscription so worn it almost disappeared in daylight. But under infrared, the words came alive. "The king who tamed wisdom, let none disturb his rest." That moment marked the first time in history that technology, legend, and scripture all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. They had found something royal, something forbidden. But if this was truly Solomon's tomb, why had it never been found before? And more terrifying, who went to such great lengths to keep it sealed? The excavation team stood in silence. 30 feet below the surface, encased in thick, unbroken limestone, was a door that hadn't been touched for over 3,000 years. There was no hinge, no handle, only a carved threshold and a block that sealed it shut. They debated for hours. Should they wait? Notify more authorities, increase security? But the inscription haunted them. Let none disturb his rest. Was it a warning, a plea, or something worse? Dr. Asher ordered the team to proceed under slow, deliberate chiseling. The block gave way, not with a crack, but with a whisper. The chamber sighed as if exhaling the weight of time. They entered a narrow corridor, its walls lined with faded mosaics and sconces of alabaster. The air was heavy yet strangely dry. Not a single cobweb, not a trace of decay. At the end stood a circular chamber, the tomb room, The room was unlike anything ever recorded in biblical archaeology. Its layout echoed Solomon's architectural style as described in ancient texts. Geometric perfection, concentric rings, symmetry grounded in sacred mathematics, and at the center, an ornate sarcophagus inlaid with cedarwood, gold, and lapis lazuli. But the true revelation wasn't the coffin. It was what surrounded it. Ivory thrones, gold-plated shields, scrolls preserved in copper tubes, astronomical instruments never seen in Israel's history. And in the far corner, a chest. Not just any chest. Acacia wood overlaid with gold. Two winged figures facing each other. The team froze. Could this be a replica of the Ark of the Covenant or the real thing hidden for centuries beneath the seal of the wisest king to ever live? No alarms went off, but something had changed in the air, like they had opened a door they were never meant to walk through. No one moved for a full minute. That gold-covered chest in the corner wasn't listed in any inventory of known relics. It was smaller than the biblical ark, but eerily similar. The lid bore two cherubim, their wings touching just as described in Exodus. But this wasn't just about visual resemblance. Dr. Ashar noticed something strange. The instruments near it were malfunctioning. Metal detectors buzzed. A thermal camera glitched. When a researcher placed his hand close, the static in the air grew thick, electric. They took readings. The object was emitting a low electromagnetic pulse unlike anything found in tombs of that era. It was faint but steady. Radiation number energy possibly. Inside the chest were 3 stone tablets, each etched with symbols, both Hebrew and Proto-Arabic. And then something astonishing, a metallic disc engraved with constellations only visible in the southern hemisphere. It didn't belong here, not in the 10th century BCE. Had Solomon's ships really traveled that far? Had they mapped the stars from lands beyond Africa or Arabia? On the chamber walls, more revelations appeared. Inscriptions in gold leaf, many mirroring known proverbs, but others unknown. One passage read, "I have seen the stars from both ends of the earth, but pride blinds faster than darkness." Another, "He who touches what is sealed will inherit its burden." Was this Solomon's private journal? A king's final warning carved not to impress, but to outlast time itself. The team realized this was not just a burial site. This was a vault of wisdom, a library of secrets, locked away until the world was ready. And now the world had opened it. But was it ready? The lighting crew worked silently, sweeping soft halogen beams across the curved walls of the chamber. At first glance, the inscriptions looked decorative, ancient Hebrew verses framed in gold leaf calligraphy. But as they dusted and digitally mapped the walls, something became apparent. Some of these verses weren't found anywhere in Scripture. They referenced places that hadn't been discovered in Solomon's time, materials never recorded, concepts that felt futuristic. One scholar, fluent in Paleo-Hebrew, froze as he translated aloud, "The sky bends not only with light, but with time. He who records stars knows the path of return." Another read, "A vessel shall carry the covenant, but not all will survive the fire that follows." The team looked at one another. Was Solomon writing about prophecy or something else? Something preserved from a higher knowledge. Dr. Ashar noticed several scrolls sealed in copper tubes. They were placed with great care away from the sarcophagus beneath carved lions as though protected. When opened, the ink had barely faded. Pages filled with diagrams, star maps, symbols, and equations. One sketch, resembling a rotating wheel within a wheel, bore an eerie resemblance to modern gyroscopic engines. But what rattled everyone most was a series of poetic laments etched in what looked like bloodstone, reading, "The wisest fall hardest. Wisdom once worshipped becomes the burden of the dead. I have seen kingdoms rise on truth and crumble in its shadow." What had Solomon seen? What truths had driven the wisest man on earth to seal away his knowledge? And were these writings his final gift or his final warning? The farther they read, the more it felt like something had been buried for a reason. The air shifted in the chamber. Every breath now felt heavier, as if the past itself weighed down on the present. One of the copper scrolls, now unrolled under intense preservation lights, bore a striking phrase repeated 3 times. East of Zion, beneath the lion's watch, await the shaking of the 7th hill. It wasn't just poetic, it was directional. Ancient scholars had often spoken in riddles, but something about the phrasing made the researchers pause. East of Zion could refer to a position outside the Temple Mount. The lion's watch matched the symbol carved above the tomb's sealed door, and the 7th hill that was more cryptic. Dr. Lena Ashar-Cross referenced the coordinates from the ancient manuscript found in the Italian monastery months earlier. When overlaid with a modern topographical map, a pattern emerged. An unexplored patch of earth less than 2 miles from Solomon's burial site, shaped like a lion's head when viewed from above. And what lay beneath it? The scans showed voids, not natural caves, but symmetrical chambers still sealed. The scroll didn't end with directions. It ended with this warning: the vessels of light carry power not meant for kings. They shall remain buried lest the world burn from knowledge unearned. It was clear Solomon or whoever buried him didn't just inhume a king. They buried something else, something feared. The scrolls spoke of tools of heaven, fragments of flame, and voices sealed in gold. Was it metaphor? Technology? Prophecy? No one could say for sure. But for the first time in centuries, the world had a clue and a map. And what waited under that lion-shaped hill might change everything or end more than it reveals. The excavation crew moved fast, but cautiously. Just beyond the lion-shaped hill mentioned in the copper scroll, ground-penetrating radar uncovered something unusual. A series of metal-lined corridors buried deep beneath the earth. They weren't random. They formed a perfect grid, too precise to be natural, too advanced to be from Solomon's time. When engineers drilled carefully into one of the corridors to insert a fiber optic camera, they saw something impossible. Gleaming gold panels, reflections moving in patterns, a device suspended midair, unmoving, untouched by dust, and then the signal cut. Whatever lay beneath that chamber wasn't just ancient, it was active. Was this Solomon's hidden technology? Theories swirled. Some believed it was part of a sacred weapon hinted at in obscure Kabbalistic texts that spoke of the breath of fire sealed under Judah. Others saw it differently, as a divine communication hub, a prophetic machine designed to interact with heaven. Whatever it was, the electromagnetic readings were off the charts. Phones died. Compasses spun wildly. Even seasoned military engineers brought in for site stabilization were shaken. One officer anonymously quoted said, "I've seen prototype weapons that don't emit half the radiation this thing does, and this is 3,000 years old." But why would Solomon, the man known for wisdom and peace, create or protect such a thing? A deeper look at the inscriptions offered a clue. The king who loved the Lord prepared the chamber for the days of fire. Were these days of fire? Now, did Solomon foresee a future where mankind would come too close to forbidden knowledge and prepare a warning or a trap? And if this technology was awakened today, would it bring wisdom or wrath? The next chamber was about to be opened, and the world held its breath. The silence was thick. Dust hovered like suspended time as researchers pushed through the final stone slab, blocking the inner vault. What lay beyond would haunt them for days. This was no burial chamber. It was a vault of judgment carved into the walls. Not painted, were visions. Biblical scenes, yes, but they were unlike any known canon. A massive flood, not of water but of fire. Mountains crumbling into the sea. The moon shattering. People marked with glowing signs. Some protected, others perishing. And at the center of it all, a robed figure with eyes of light standing atop what appeared to be a fractured world. His hand pointed downward. Beneath him was the temple. And below the temple, the device from the previous chamber. One of the inscriptions translated under dim torchlight read, "When the fire speaks, the wise will listen, but the proud will raise the sword against heaven." The team froze. This wasn't just prophecy. It was a warning carved in Solomon's vault centuries before Christ. Yet it spoke of technology, of end-time judgment, of a reckoning yet to come. Some scholars likened the glowing figure to descriptions of the Messiah in apocalyptic books like Ezekiel and Revelation. Others feared something darker, the rise of a deceiver cloaked in light, a reference to the Antichrist. A professor from the Hebrew University whispered what everyone was thinking. This isn't just a tomb. It's a time capsule. A seal broken in the wrong age could ignite everything Solomon feared. Why did he preserve such terrifying knowledge? Was this for our generation? And what happens now that the seal has been broken? They hadn't reached the end yet, because behind the chamber of warnings, there was a final staircase leading down. No one expected another passage. And yet beneath the chamber of warnings, embedded in the very bedrock, was a narrow staircase, worn, ancient, almost invisible to the eye. It spiraled down into silence, its entrance obscured by a fallen slab. Only when the researchers cleared the debris did they find the inscription etched into the threshold. Only the humble may descend. The proud shall be blinded. What could be hidden below the tomb of Solomon, Israel's wisest king? Cameras were forbidden. Only handwritten notes, dim lanterns, and hushed voices descended the spiral. The air changed, thick, dry, electric. Step by step, they entered a realm untouched for thousands of years. The stone gave way to a strange metallic corridor. Not entirely iron or bronze, but a hybrid alloy with properties unknown to modern science. Embedded in the walls were symbols that matched no known Semitic language. One scholar gasped. She had seen similar patterns once in a scroll fragment recovered from the Qumran caves sealed away by the Essenes. At the staircase's end was a vate hexagonal chamber, and in its center a pillar of crystal humming, faintly glowing. Surrounding it were 6 stone seats, one for each direction of the compass, save one. The 7th chair, facing east, had been shattered. On the ground before the crystal were ashes, and beneath the ashes, a scroll sealed in gold. As the team approached, sensors flickered, radiation spikes, electromagnetic distortions. The crystal pulsed, and the scroll, its surface bore the seal of Solomon, and a phrase written in what experts believe to be Proto-Hebrew. Do not open unless the stars fall and the moon weeps. What could this mean? And why was it hidden so deep, so carefully? Whatever lay in that scroll, it was never meant to be opened lightly. Yet the scroll was now in human hands. The scroll lay on the table untouched for hours, not from fear, though fear was there, but from reverence. The researchers, theologians, and historians who had spent years chasing whispers of Solomon's lost wisdom now held what might be his final message to the world.